Human behavior has been marked by violence since the beginning of recorded history. The Old Testament story of the first human family recounts the murder of Abel by his brother Cain, both the sons of Adam and Eve. Our collective imagination has been riveted by the drama of war for thousands of years, and the 20th century was by far the bloodiest century of all. Around the middle of the 20th century, social scientists began to study and contemplate the prospects for widespread, long-standing peace on Earth. The Global Peace Studies movement is one of the primary expressions of that work. In this program, Dr. Joe Hatcher addresses a series of issues and questions about the potential for violence in human affairs. Are human beings inherently violent, or is violent behavior learned? What impact do early experience and child-rearing practices have on an individual's tendencies for violence? How and why can we become habituated to violence in our daily lives? How and why do we fall prey to a mentality of us versus them, and occasionally target them for violence? How do mass media and competitive sports influence the nature and extent of violence in our culture? Dr. Hatcher is professor of psychology at Ripon College. He specializes not only in peace studies, but also in positive psychology and the psychology of happiness.
Thanks for having me here today. This is a topic that I really like to talk about, peace studies. It relates to all the other things I have interest in, positive psychology, psychology in general, the world at large, education, young people, people my age. And what I want to do is give you an idea of what peace studies is, so you know something about it. It was a new area to me when I first ran into it, and talk a little bit about connections between that and other kinds of things, and some of the things that I've been able to do with this and to do with students. First of all, though, I want to tell you a little bit of background, because when I talk about peace, when I say I'm a peace studies person, I know from psychology that the usual thing people do is we make personality attributions. We think that tells me something about that guy. He must be a really peaceful person, he must be really gentle, he must be different from maybe the average person. And I want to tell you that's just not true. I grew up the way most people do. Very sort of normal kind of life, this is a rural southern life in Georgia. So I grew up hunting and fishing and playing baseball and playing war games in the backyard. We would blow each other up pretty regularly, and I really enjoyed doing stuff like that. I used to read about war and armies and World War II air power. I was going to be a fighter pilot. I was actually appointed to the Air Force Academy, and at a time in my life when I had other offers, I wound up going to Dartmouth College instead. So my background is not really peaceable, not really peaceful. And again, I think that's kind of an important thing to know. I ran into peace studies in the way that a lot of people do. I ran into it sort of accidentally. I was a social psychologist. I was interested in all of social behavior, how people sit, how they look, facial expressions, how you like people, things like that. But one thing that always interested me, perhaps because of my Southern background, was racism. Racism, sexism, all the types of prejudice, and these are what we call social justice issues. So they are issues that have values attached to them. They are sort of make the world a better place kind of issues, and that was an interest of mine. But what really got me into peace studies was watching a movie. I watched a movie one night, I've forgotten the name of it. It was one of these World War III movies where everybody gets blown up, and you sort of watch people pitifully die off in the end. And that's not quite the way it happened, but it was pretty bad. And I was walking across the campus here the next morning, and I was sort of having those idle thoughts that you have. I was thinking, well, the images of the movie were really in my head. And I was thinking, what would I think if I realized we had gone to nuclear war? What would my last thought be? And sometimes you ask yourself questions like that and you don't get an answer, and it just kind of, but this time I got an answer, and it was like somebody was talking. It was like, why weren't you doing something about that? And I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting answer.